Hello, music fans. You're watching Death by Unicorn, where we talk about metal, rock, and prog music. And this is New Music Picks 2026. I'm going to talk about 12 albums that came out mostly on June 5th, 2026. I think one of these maybe came out June 4th. And I'll talk about them in my order of preference. Starting with a live album this time. I usually prefer studio albums, but this one's particularly great. This is Voivod and their live album, Symphonique. They're a Canadian progressive thrash metal band, and I'm putting this one in my excellent tier. They're a very unique band. Voivod plays with the Orchestre Symphonique de Quebec here, and it's really interesting, really excellent to hear these progressive thrash metal songs with a full orchestra like this. It brings out Voivod's uniqueness. It helps you hear the musicality that they have that sometimes gets lost in their heaviness. They play complex chords, complex melodies, a lot of dissonance, but very intricate and very beautiful when you come to appreciate those types of complex chords and dissonances and atonality. And yeah, it kind of reminds me of King Crimson. They're playing, but in like a thrash metal context, like King Crimson meets like Metallica, Megadeth, Slayer type thing. They end their set with their cover of Pink Floyd's Astronomy Domine, and this is probably the best live album I've heard in 2026 so far. The performances are great, the sound quality and production are great. It has something special to it rather than a typical live album would have, since it has the orchestra. And I'd say it's more essential listening for Voivod fans than even a lot of their studio albums are. Um, I very rarely prefer live albums to studio. I don't think I'd go as far as saying it's better than every studio album they've made so far, but I would say it's on par with and among their best, like top 5 or 6 releases for me. So if you like Voivod, check out Symphonique by Voivod. Next, I want to talk about Converge and their second new album that they released this year. It's called Hum of Hurt. Their 12th album overall. They're an American metalcore band. They've got mathcore, hardcore punk, post-hardcore, sludge metal, and post-metal influences. And I'm also putting this in my excellent tier. The guitar playing on this release reminds me of the band Every Time I Die, which is a band I love. And in particular, I noticed that on the opening riff of Doom and Bloom, which is one of my favorite tracks on the album. And the vocals on this release are really heavy. They're hardcore, aggressive, pretty much the whole time. So definitely avoid this if you're not into that. The Voivod vocals that I mentioned before are kind of aggressive, but this is obviously to the next level. The Voivod vocals are more like the barking thrash vocals, and they're kind of meant to sound like that. The Converge is full-on screaming vocals, but if you are into that, this is one of the best bands in this style. It's another excellent album from them. Love the powerful drumming too, and the time signature changes they do. And this is the second new album they put out this year, so they've been busy, and I like it even better than their previous album this year, which was called Love Is Not Enough. So if you like Converge and you like metalcore, mathcore, that kind of thing, check out Hum of Hurt by Converge. Next, I want to talk about Slift and their album Fantasia, the 4th album by this French band. It's kind of like a heavy psychedelic rock. It's got stoner doom metal, kind of like Elder. So if you like Elder, check it out. It's got that stoner doom metal mixed with heavy psych, mixed with progressive rock, post metal, maybe even some post hardcore, progressive metal, ambient, space rock, all that kind of mixed in a stew. Putting this in my excellent tier as well. I really love the last album by Slift, which is Ayreon from 2024. And I feel like this album, this new one, it rivals that. It may even be slightly better than Ayreon, but I definitely need some more listens to decide for sure. Corrupted Sky is an awesome track. The guitar solo on that reminded me of Megadeth a bit, kind of like the Tornado of Souls guitar solo, which was kind of surprising from this band because I didn't think of them as a band that would just have these ripping guitar solos. And in general, on this album, the guitar parts were more technical than what I recall from the last album, and it's more interesting and impressive, and I like that. And this is a great album for fans of Elder, Mastodon, and Intronaut, so check it out if you like the sounds of that. That's Fantasia by Slift. Next, I want to mention August Burns Red and their album Season of Surrender. This is the 11th album by this American melodic metalcore band. They've got some progressive metal influences even in here from time to time as well. And I'm putting this in my excellent tier. Really solid metalcore album from August Burns Red. They're a band that's consistently solid in that genre. I always like everything I hear by them. They haven't bubbled up to one of my favorite bands lists quite yet, but if they keep putting out quality like this, I think they'll probably make that list in a couple albums down the road. If you like good old metalcore, check out Season of Surrender by August Burns Red. Now, those are my excellent tier albums. Moving down to my very good tier, I've got Evergrey and their new album, Architects of a New Weave, the 15th album by this Swedish band. It's progressive power metal with alternative metal, even sometimes a little gent sounding guitars from time to time and some riffs. It's not a gent album or anything, but you can hear that kind of riffing from time to time and a little bit of that kind of production. And I always call the singer Tom England the Michael Bolton of metal because he has that similarly powerful, recognizable, and anthemic clean vocal ability, but he always sounds a bit cheesy to me. I love that this band. Yeah, I do love this band, but I think a lot of their albums are a bit samey. A lot of their albums are excellent tier stuff, and they never put out anything bad. But that's my critique of them. It sometimes sounds a little samey and safe. They don't really do anything surprising. And I don't think this is one of their standout albums. It's probably in the bottom half of their discography for me, but I'll still put it in my very good tier rather than excellent tier, where some of their stronger albums belong. They're a talented band, but I'm kind of looking for them to push the boundaries a bit more and be a little more interesting, because this is very safe progressive power metal music. Of course, excellent performances, excellent production, nothing wrong with it. Just didn't excite me as much as I was hoping a new album from a band with this much talent would do. But if you like progressive power metal, you might like Architects of a New Weave by Evergrey, so check it out. Then I want to mention Of Montreal and their album Aethermead, the 20th album by this American band. It's psychedelic indie pop rock, and I'm putting this in my very good tier as well. The vocals here by Of Montreal remind me a bit of a band I like called Attack in Black. The music has that vibe to it as well, similar to Daniel Romano, who was in Attack in Black. So if you know Attack in Black or Daniel Romano, then maybe you'll like of Montreal if you like that. But it also sounds kind of old-timey at times. It's old-timey, but it also has modern indie production. This song, Take the Form, sounds like a 60s psychedelic pop song. It's got some jazziness, but also some 90s alternative indie influence. The main negative I have with this album by Of Montreal is there's a bit too much overt vulgar language just randomly out of nowhere with some F words for my liking. Now that I sometimes like to listen to music around my toddler at home, I don't really want him repeating that stuff. Otherwise, it would be a really good chill album to have on around the family, just relaxing, but still interesting and different, and not just like listening to pop radio. The melodies on this album sometimes remind me of Syd Barrett era Pink Floyd. It's a very good album. I'm interested to follow what Of Montreal does next and hear more of their back catalog. But with so much other great music out there, not sure how much time I'll spend listening to them. But if you like psychedelic indie pop rock, check out Aethermead by of Montreal. Next, I want to mention another live album. It's Ayreon with 30th Anniversary and Amazing Flight Through Time. Ayreon, of course, is a Dutch project by Arjen Anthony Lucassen, who makes these progressive metal rock operas. And I'm putting this in my very good tier. Arjen gets a bunch of guest musicians to perform tracks from throughout his career and just celebrate his 30th anniversary, 30 years since the release of the first Ayreon album, The Final Experiment, which was from 1995. So this performance happened in September 2025 at Tilburg in the Netherlands, and he did 6 spectacular shows, and all 1,500 tickets were snapped up within minutes, with fans traveling from an astonishing 71 countries to witness this live experience. And this is really well done progressive metal rock opera music. It's a big ensemble of guests with male, female vocals, amazing guitar solos, cheesy conceptual lyrics. Of course, this can be a little bit cheesy, like I was mentioning with Evergrey, a bit cheesy, theatrical, over the top, but it's really fun, and I particularly love anytime Michael Mills from Toehider sings. He's great. So if you're a fan of Ayreon, definitely check this out, and to hear live versions of some tracks that you're familiar with. If you haven't heard Ayreon, I wouldn't start here. I'd start with studio versions of the tracks, because of course this is a live album, and I do think the studio versions of these tracks are better. But definitely one to check out if you're an Ayreon fan and you want to hear a live album. Now, moving down from my very good tier to my good tier, I've got Modest Mouse with their album An Eraser and a Maze, the 8th album by this American band. This is indie rock with psychedelic, post-punk, art rock, and pop influences. And yeah, this is just a bunch of solid indie rock songs, similar to the other couple of albums that I've heard from Modest Mouse. It's not enough interesting stuff to keep me coming back to them, but just a good tier album nonetheless. If you like indie rock, check out An Eraser and a Maze by Modest Mouse. Then I want to mention Evanescence with Sanctuary, the 6th album of this American band. It's alternative metal with industrial metal, new metal, pop rock, gothic metal, symphonic metal, and djent influences, which I'm also putting in my good tier. And I really enjoyed Evanescence's debut back when it came out when I was a kid back in 2003. Very good album there. Their output I've heard since that hasn't been quite as good. They've had some good songs here and there, but they've never had an album that had an impact like that. But it's never been bad either. I do like this album a bit better than the last Evanescence album. It's really interesting to hear Evanescence actually sounding much heavier here than I'd expect from them. They bring in some almost djent sounding guitars and production into their alternative metal sound, while retaining very catchy, accessible, and angelic vocals of Amy Lee. If you like Evanescence, check out Sanctuary and let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. Now I want to mention a band that I enjoy called Am I in Trouble, who's released a remix album called Facets. They're an American avant-garde black metal band with some post-metal, post-rock, progressive metal, industrial metal, and electronic influences. I'm putting this in my good tier. They put out their debut album Spectrum in 2025. I thought it was a very good album. And now in 2026, this new album sees those 7 songs of Spectrum explored, stretched, condensed, lightened, darkened, ripped apart, and stitched back together. Now I'm quoting from Bandcamp, I think here. 15 new compositions that span ambient, cyberpunk, dungeon, synth, industrial metal, chiptune, progressive rock, drone, electronic music, and so much more. And yeah, I guess there's this community called the Ampwall community. So artists who all met and are connected via Ampwall from a diverse array of musical backgrounds and genres came together to find different shades and hues within the spectrum. Like all the song names are colors. And some of these remixes are really good. Remixes or reimaginings, I should say, because like a lot of times they change the complete flow and sound of the songs. It's not just changing the mix. Others are not so good. Uh, I think there's almost too much difference and not enough cohesion or consistency in the sound here, like jumping from a prog rock song to chip tune to dungeon synth to ambient to drone to electronic to black metal. It's just too grating. I kind of wish they would just focus on making new studio material, to be honest. I've never really been into these remix albums. I would love to hear new compositions from Am I in Trouble rather than them spending time having other artists remix their work. But if you do really like Am I in Trouble and you like weird remix albums of black metal that go electronic and dungeon synth and prog rock and chiptune and droney, then check this out. Facets by Am I in Trouble could be up your alley. All right, two more albums to go in this video. Second last one I want to mention is by Butterfly Mind, and it's an EP called the Butterfly Mind Free EP, and it's called that because it is free to get the digital download on Bandcamp. So go snatch that up if you want that. They're from the UK, an experimental art rock group with post-rock, ambient, electronic, alternative, jazz, and progressive rock influences. And a quote from their Bandcamp, this is the first official recording by Butterfly Mind, and they're a musical unit created by Tim Bonus as a live showcase of his songs from his illustrious recording career as a solo artist and with his group with Steven Wilson. It's called No Man. And over the past few years, this group has evolved into a unique musical unit combining prog, noise, jazz rock, but all in service of Tim's songs. So the EP is free on their Bandcamp. You can get a digital download for $0. And while I love Steven Wilson and I've thought a few albums by No Man were good, and the Tim Bonus solo album I heard was good as well, I've never become completely sold on No Man or Tim Bonus. He seems like a cool guy and he writes some decent songs, but I can't really get into his voice. And there is something samey about all the stuff I hear from him. It's all pretty slow and can get a little boring. It's all kind of this artsy, atmospheric art rock stuff. So if you like that, you might enjoy this. But to me, it's just average tier music, nothing special. There was the odd cool drum part on here by Andy Edwards, but even that's not enough to make this good enough for me to be grabbed by it. But if you like Tim Bonus, if you like No Man, and you want to hear that music performed by a real live band, check out Butterfly Mind Free EP. And last album that I want to mention in this video is by Blood Incantation, and it's a soundtrack called All Gates Open, original motion picture soundtrack. I guess if you count this as an album, it's their fifth album. They're an American band, and usually they do progressive death metal, but this here is not that. It's just an ambient film score. It's got some progressive electronic vibes to it. I forgot to mention Butterfly Mind. Maybe I mentioned I put it in my average tier. Didn't even quite make my good tier because I just feel like it's just average. And same thing with this Blood Incantation one. I'm just putting it average tier. I love this band, but this is not so much an album. It's more of a soundtrack, a film soundtrack. And it opens with two back-to-back over 20-minute long ambient epics. And they're just a bit too chill and ambient for my liking. They're really slow, not much is happening. Maybe they work really well over the visuals they're meant to support. But I just review music and albums here, and it's hard to stay engaged when you listen to these songs as an album experience. So that's how I review music typically, as an album. Maybe this is okay to have on in the background if you just want chill vibes. It's definitely not bad. It's not annoying. It's chill. Maybe it'd be good to fall asleep to, actually. there's, after those two long 20-minute epic ambient songs, there's a shorter song, again in a similar vibe, and then it ends with another 13-minute ambient epic. It's all very samey, very relaxed the whole time, and I'm just putting this in my average tier. You could basically interchange this with other like ambient relaxation sleep music. Yeah, very average. Not what you typically hear. Not really my thing. And yeah, it's hard to review this kind of ambient film soundtrack music as if it's an album that's meant to be actively listened to. I know it's not that kind of music. Some people might really love this if they like ambient. It's most similar to Blood Incantation's album called Time Wave Zero, which I also have a hard time rating and kind of just put in my average tier because I much prefer to hear Blood Incantation doing progressive death metal music. But sprinkling in these atmospheric ambient moments for contrast in that music rather than hear them do a whole album of ambient. But the cool history of this album here, from what the band says about it, is that this rewinds to the very beginning of the Absolute Elsewhere sessions. And Absolute Elsewhere is an amazing album. Composed in 2021, these 4 expansive tracks explore a markedly different sonic terrain, pastoral, ambient, and deeply introspective. Built from synth improvisations. Maybe that's also part of why I don't love it, because I prefer more composed music that is like planned out and makes sense where it goes, rather than as much of this free-flowing improv stuff. There's some acoustic instrumentation, there's freeform studio sessions, and the material captures what the guitarist and vocalist Paul Raydell calls the yang energy to the shadowed atmospheres of their 2022 release, Time Wave Zero. And the accompanying documentary places viewers inside Berlin's iconic Hansa Ton Studios, where the band decamped for a month to write and record Absolute Elsewhere. Maybe I'd like actually watching the documentary rather than just listening to this without it, because the film offers an unfiltered glimpse into their day-to-day existence, tracking everything from late-night studio sessions to their immersion in the city's cultural landscape. And it features appearances from members of Tangerine Dream, Palace, and Sigen. So Rydell says, this is not meant to be the next album or follow-up to the Absolute Elsewhere. It's the soundtrack to the documentary about making the album with songs that are from before. And the documentary deserves to be experienced not just as content for the internet. The soundtrack captures the very first seed of what led to Absolute Elsewhere, and this is where that era started. So yeah, more of like an interesting historical soundtrack for a documentary. But if you love Blood Incantation, if you like ambient stuff, or if you need something to maybe just fall asleep to, maybe this will work for you. Try All Gates Open by Blood Incantation. And that's it for my first impressions of these 12 new releases that came out on mostly June 5th, maybe a couple of June 4ths. What do you think of these albums? Let me know down in the comments. Did anything else come out recently that you think I might enjoy? Also let me know. And if you like metal, rock, and prog music, you're in the right place. I typically post my first impressions of new music as it comes out every week. And my next video in this series, I'll be talking about new music from the bands Yes, OK Goodnight, Vend and Plas, Fires in the Distance, Still Remains, Artificial Silence, and Genghis Tron. And those albums that I just mentioned there are probably coming out today at the time I post this video, because I'm recording this on June 11th, but I will probably be posting this on June 12th, which is when all those albums that I just mentioned come out. So definitely check those out and stay tuned for my first impressions on them, and peace out.